one American and counter-terrorism official, he testified before U.S. House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has high intention to procure chemical weapons and biological devices, particularly in Pakistan and Yemen. So we cannot say that the threat or the risk is over. We have to be much more vigilant than ever before. Sir, Chairman, sir, I would also like to say, it has been mentioned by Mr. Uttam Kumar, I would like to share his views. As the bill mentioned about this person, perhaps I would like also request the Honorable Minister. Now there are firms, there are companies, there are rogue states also. Sometimes they try to fund this kind of the terrorist activities. Similarly about, as Mrs. Supriya Sule was telling, that even in the United Nations vocabulary and the terminology, even the United Nations, the resolution 1540, according which we are now complying with, they have also mentioned in the CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, and this nuclear weapons. I would also request my Honorable Minister whether he would like to include this kind of the thing, because there is no clarification on these issues. Similarly, I would also like to request, though it is not directly related to his ministry, it comes under the Disaster Management Authority, which comes under the Ministry of Ministry of Home Affairs. I have attended many of the conferences, many of these workshops on the CBRN and how to defend ourselves. In fact, what is happening, unfortunately, even our disaster management manual, it is also not very clear. Who will be the first responder? If suppose there is a biological attack or there is a chemical attack, whether it is generally, traditionally, it is police which is the first responder for such kind of emergencies. Are our police prepared for this? Are our police is trained for it? Are our police is equipped for it? What has happened, Mr. Manish Tiwari was also mentioning, in our this disaster management mechanism, is the BARC, the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, that is a nodal agency. Whether the Bhabha Atomic Research Centers will go there or what will really happen? So I would like to request, if the CBRN related disaster is there, is a matter of great concern for all of us. So how to, we are all, a country as a whole is vulnerable to such kind of the attacks. How to prepare ourselves, how to train our forces for this, and how to equip ourselves, that is really very... Nowadays we just believe on this, that NDRF will take care of it, or SDRF will take care of it, but everywhere NDRF is not there, and I think it will take a lot of time. I think that is an issue which should be, I think, Similarly about large facilities are required to isolate and decontaminate our patients and victims. There is no clarity on that in our disaster management manuals. Sir, I would also like to give one story which has been published by an American book. The book name is Anti-Gravity Handbook. In fact, this story would not have come to our notice. In 1985, this book has been published. They have given a very wonderful story what really happened. In 1965, Chinese, while they were in occupation over Tibet and Lhasa, they got some pages of manuscript, Sanskrit manuscript, and these Sanskrit manuscripts were sent to one of Professor Ruth Rayana, an American professor, and a Sanskrit scholar and Indologist. She was on sabbatical at that time in University of Punjab in Ludhiana. These papers or these manuscripts were sent to her for translation. This lady translated this manuscript. One translation was sent to our Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, and one translation of this version was sent to this Chinese. Our Indian Institute of Bangalore, after a few years, they came out that this is not of much use, and it cannot be used, and it is not part of the book we claim, the Jan servers. But after a few years in 1975, Chinese came out with a press conference that these manuscripts, they're very, very important, and they are going to use it in making their interstellar spaceships. Years later, one Professor A.V. Krishnamurthy from the same institute, in Indian Institute of Bangalore, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, he mentioned, yes, we believe that some of our texts especially Vedas and Sanskrit texts, they have the references to the spacecraft and the aeronautics and all these things. I would like to request our Honorable Minister, can we have a study on this to defend our country, to defend our citizens? Can we think and study these in Sanskrit texts so that we can find out some defensive mechanism? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Member Shri E.T. Mohammed Bashirji.
Sir, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak on this, the weapons of mass destruction and their delivery system, prohibition of unlawful activities amendment bill. Sir, of course, this is a good move. The scope of the bill is very limited. That's a modification of the Parent Act to the effect of including funding also within the ambit of the Parent Act. Sir, India's stand was very clear always, now and then, that India should stand for protecting the national interest, common goodness, and peace of the entire world. So coming to this particular topic, we have always advocated for total disarmament. Our desire and ambition was to become a model to the entire world. We have did our level best in this direction. India took initiative for the International Convention to prohibit the use of nuclear weapon. Sir, in 1988, at the special session of United Nations General Assembly on Disarmament at New York, the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi put forward a comprehensive action plan based on this subject. Said bill, original bill, in 2005 was moved by the then External Affairs Minister, Shri Natwar Singh. Our stand was very clear, sir. Nuclear power can be used for security of the nation, development of the nation, but at the same time, we were deadly against the misuse of it, whether it is chemical weapon, biological or toxin weapon. That was our clear stand. Sir, we can be proud of our leaders, sir. Our country should be really grateful to former leaders. They took a bold stand always. Their intention, their farsightedness, we have to appreciate that, sir. Rajiv Gandhi's ministry, their farsightedness, commitment for uncompromising, commitment for peaceful coexistence and world peace. Sir, my tribute to such great leaders in this occasion. Sir, it may be noted that India has also institutional mechanism for preventing unlawful access to such weapon and their delivery system. Sir, use of nuclear energy is useful thing. At the same time, we have to handle the misuse of it and we must treat it with iron hand, that way. Sir, if such things are used, my learned friends were saying about the consequences is that if that is used in a nuclear power is used in a negative manner, we cannot even imagine the havoc it is going to make, the destruction of the life and organism it is going to create. Sir, there are several international conventions, such as chemical convention, biological convention, toxins convention. We are all committed to go according to that. There are many things. I don't want to say much. UN Security Council resolution 1540 require all states to adopt measures to criminalize assistance to non-state actors or to acquire weapons of mass destruction and to put in place the domestic control to prevent it. Sir, we were taking such an initiative in the past also. I am concluding, sir. I would like to say one more thing, sir. This kind of things, when we are bringing this kind of legislation, we should be guarded also, sir. I would like to say that. Misuse of legislation also is a problem. Last time also when we were discussing the other thing, we were warning about that. Legislation is good and everybody will support it, no doubt. Sir, I am concluding. by quoting, I am concluding by quoting the then External Affairs Minister, I quote, that was Singh. I would once again reiterate that India is committed to safeguard its security as a nuclear weapon state and no deepen the autonomous scientific and technical capacity for meeting the other thing. So I don't want, finally he said, we are committed to ensure that these do not fall into the wrong hands, especially the terrorists and non-state actors. India has a record in this regard, and India will continue to work to prevent proliferation of this kind of things. Sir, I would like to conclude. This is a legislation which can be passed unanimously. Let us hope for the best. Let us pass this thing unanimously. With this few words, sir, I conclude.
Honorable Member Sri N.K. Premachandran.
Thank you very much, sir, for affording me this opportunity to take part in the discussion on the very important bill, the Weapons of Mass Destruction and Their Delivery System, Prohibition of Unlawful Activities Amendment Act of 2022. Sir, the original Act of 2005 has to be amended and Section 12A has to be incorporated, by which financing of all these activities, financing itself is also becoming an unlawful activity in respect of these weapons of mass destruction. Such a new provision has to be incorporated by means of this amendment, and I fully support this bill and also the amendment, but subject to certain specific clarification from the Honourable Minister regarding the legislation. Sir, it is well accepted that the Indian position that the weapons of mass destruction is always a threat to the international peace and security. And nuclear weapons, chemical weapons and biological weapons, these have already been described as the weapons of mass destruction by UN Security Council Resolution of 1540 of 2004. And on the basis of that, we have enacted a legislation, and the original Act of 2005 has been legislated, and the bill was piloted by the then Foreign Minister, Sri Natwar Singh Ji, and that is to be amended. Sir, sir, we have the bitter experience in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Sir, in Hiroshima, in Japan alone, in the year 1945, August 6th and August 9th, we have seen that 66,000 people have instantly died, and 160,000 people have to die due to the radiation by the end of that year. So this is the mass destruction by these weapons. That is why in my opening remarks itself, I have stated that it is against international peace and security at any cost. That has to be disarmament policy of the Indian government or the government of India has to be highlighted at all the international forums. Sir, in First World War, first it was invented by Germany and used the world's first weapons of mass destruction, that is poison gas, artillery shells and pressurized tanks that wafted the deadly toxins over the battlefield. It also killed and wounded thousands of people in the First World War. The first use was by Germany during the First World War. And all these bitter experiences have come to the conclusion, or it has persuaded the United Nations to incorporate this resolution or to adopt this resolution of UN Security Council 1540 on 28th April 2004 in Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, and it is still in existence. And India is a strong supporter of this disarmament policy. And in CTBT and the NPT, also our policy is very specific. We have to protect and safeguard the national security of the country. At the same time, we will never use it as the first. So such a concrete policy has been enunciated since independence. So as rightly just now E.T. Mohammed Bashir Sahib has said, we have to salute our forefathers for having our consistent policy in respect of this nuclear disarmament and all these things. Sir, coming to this particular amendment, I would like to seek the clarification from the Honorable External Affairs Minister, because this is for financing these weapons of mass destruction, its proliferation as well as its delivery. Proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and the delivery of the mass destruction, if any person includes company includes according to Section 20 of the original Act. So it is absolute and it is very clear, because Section 20 is very clear that a company includes a group of individuals also. So there is no fault in the definition, as well as using the word person also. There is no harm in it. I fully agree with it. My reservation is whether the original act is not sufficient to deal with this subject also. See, I would like to quote section 15. Section 15 of the original act is also very clear. I would like to quote section 15 of the act. Sir, section 15. Section 15 of the original act, punishment for aiding non-state actor or terrorist. Any person who with intent to aid any non-state actor or terrorist contravenes the provisions of section 9 of this act shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life and shall also be liable to fine. And any person who with an intent to aid means intent to finance, even the financing the proliferation and the delivery of weapons of mass destruction will come within the purview of section 15 of the act. And sir, coming to section 7, sir, I'm within the bill, because this is an amendment to the original act. My question to the Honorable Ministry is whether the amendment is highly essential or required. I fully support the amendment, no doubt about it. Yes, whether it is required, because already the existing provisions in the original act itself is very clear, but there is no provision to seize the property, I do agree. And punishment, section 17, punishment for violation of the provisions of the act, where any person contravenes or abets or attempts to contravene. Abets or attempt to contravene. That abets and attempts means a person or a company who is financing this proliferation of the weapons of mass destruction or delivery of the mass destruction also, the section 17 will be attracted. So I am, with this clarification which I would like to seek from the Honorable Minister, and also section 3, sir, I am concluding. Section 3, clause 4 is also very clear that the applicability of the act is also very clear. Subclause 4 of section 3. So there is no ambiguity in this. Only such a clarification I am seeking, and hence I fully support the bill. With these words I conclude. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Member Sri P. Ravindranath Kumarji.
So thank you for the opportunity, sir. So I would like to support the bill. Sir, first, let me first of all take the opportunity to appreciate our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji for transforming our nation as the global leader through several significant strategic initiatives. Thanks to the vision and leadership of our Prime Minister, India is now playing an active role in being a constructive contributor in the efforts to create an international order through reformed multilateralism and human-centric globalization. And also I wish to appreciate our Honorable External Affairs Minister Sri Jaishankar ji, whose guidance and efforts are helping India secure improved bilateral relations and regional stability. Sir, the influence of online media was not that rampant in 2005 when this bill was adopted. Now, on YouTube or dark web, even a teenager can manufacture a WMD sitting on the convenience of their home, instructed by an insane terrorist or even a hostile nation and financed by another in a different nation. So the web of terror financing has expanded manifold, and it is important that we should protect our nation from such insane terror or military attacks. Sir, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres in April 2020 has warned that the pandemic has revived the specter of bioterrorism. Sir, he mentioned in his quote, the weaknesses and lack of preparedness exposed by this pandemic provide a window onto how a terrorist attack might unfold. Sir, preparation is the key. We cannot complacent. And sir, we cannot be prepared alone. Sir, misuse of WMD leading to incident like bioterrorism is a global issue. Sir, India, under the leadership of Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji, certainly has reason to be proud of its achievement. However, in the regional context, India's pride, unfortunately, is also neighbors' envy. Sir, in 2008, when the UPA government was in power, we saw a massive and coordinated terror attack in Mumbai. This was not an attack carried at the borders. This happened well within our boundaries, at the heart of our commercial capital. Of course, some attackers were neutralized and some were put behind bars. So 2 minutes to give important. But what about those who financed them? Should we believe that they came within our boundaries without the support of insiders? Sir, it means there is a well-oiled financial network functioning within our nation and across as well. So, sir, I support this bill in anticipation that this terror financing network will be wiped off our country as well as across the border. And suggest our Honourable Minister, we must encourage the use of technological innovation and policies to improve our counter-proliferation efforts. We must be prepared to combat the use of new mechanisms of financing these weapons, like the use of blockchain technology, which supports cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or online crowd financing website. Finally, I conclude, sir, this under the leadership of our Prime Minister, our government should ensure that periodic assessment of this enactment so that we can ensure the proper functioning of our multiple agencies engaged in this sphere. I support this bill on behalf of my party.
Honourable Member Shri Hanuman Beniwal ji. Very brief.
सभापति महोदय,
Very brief.
सदन में आज सामूहिक संहार का आयुध और उनकी परिधान प्रणाली विधि विरुद्ध क्रियाकलापों का प्रतिषेध संशोधन विधेयक 2022 पर चर्चा हो रही है। मेरे से पूर्व माननीय सदस्यों ने भी चिंता जाहिर की और विश्व का हर व्यक्ति ये चिंता जाहिर करता, चाहे अभी रूस यूक्रेन का मामला था तो सब लोग इंडिया के अंदर भी चिंता करते कहीं परमाणु युद्ध नहीं हो जाए, कहीं एक देश दूसरे देश पर परमाणु बम नहीं फेंक दे, क्योंकि सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के समय नागासाकी हिरोशिमा पे जब अमेरिका ने बम फेंके, आज भी वहाँ 66,000 लोग उस समय मारे गए थे और 1,40,000 लोग उस समय मरे। आज भी इतने सालों बाद भी जब वहाँ बच्चे पैदा होते हैं तो निश्चित रूप से कहीं न कहीं आनुवंशिक गंभीर बीमारियों का शिकार होते हैं। ये पूरा विश्व चिंता करता है कि परमाणु हथियार का उपयोग नहीं हो। मैं धन्यवाद दूंगा मंत्री जी को और इसके उद्देश्य और कारणों के अंदर जो आपने बताया कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठन द्वारा सामूहिक संहार के आयुधों और उनकी परिधान प्रणालियों के प्रसार से संबंधित विनियमों का विस्तार किया गया। इसके अतिरिक्त संयुक्त राष्ट्र सुरक्षा परिषद की लक्ष्यित वित्तीय साझियां और वित्तीय एक्शन टास्क फोर्स की सिफारिशों को सामूहिक संहार के आयुधों और उनकी परिधान प्रणालियों के प्रसार के विरुद्ध अधिदेशित किया गया और उपरोक्त को ध्यान में रखते हुए उक्त अधिनियम को संशोधित करने की आवश्यकता है ताकि सामूहिक संहार के आयुधों और उनकी परिधान प्रणालियों के प्रसार को वित्त पोषित करने के विरुद्ध किया जा सके, जिससे हम अपनी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाध्यताओं को पूरा कर सकें। सभापति, विधेयक व्यक्तियों को सामूहिक विनाश के हथियारों और उनके वितरण प्रणालियों से संबंधित किसी भी निश्चित गतिविधियों के वित्त पोषण से रोकता है और व्यक्तियों को ऐसी गतिविधियों के वित्त पोषण रोकने के लिए केंद्र सरकार उनके धन, वित्तीय संपत्ति, आर्थिक संसाधनों को फ्रीज, जब्त या संलग्न कर सकती है। ये व्यक्तियों को किसी भी निश्चित गतिविधि के संबंध में अन्य व्यक्तियों के लाभ के लिए वित्तीय संबंधित सेवाएं उपलब्ध कराने से रोकता। मैं इस बिल का समर्थन करता हूं। महोदय, मैं एक आलेख पढ़ रहा था, उसमें लिखा था कि उस बात को सदन में पढ़ना चाहूंगा। परमाणु प्रसार 6 दशक से अधिक समय से दुनिया के लिए बड़ी चुनौती बना हुआ है, लेकिन इस दौरान इस समस्या के रूप बदलते गए। खास तौर पर शीत युद्ध के खत्म होने के बाद इसमें काफी बदलाव आया। ग्लोबल न्यूक्लियर ऑर्डर के स्थापित होने के बाद से संभावित खतरों और सत्ता के संतुलन में व्यापक परिवर्तन हुआ और इस वजह से पहले की तुलना में परमाणु प्रसार आज कहीं अधिक चुनौतीपूर्ण बन गया है। हमें इस सच्चाई को स्वीकार करना होगा। ज्यादातर देशों के लिए परमाणु हथियार अत्यंत उनकी सुरक्षा से जुड़े हुए हैं और परमाणु प्रसार व्यवस्था की पेशकश को कमियों के बावजूद इसलिए स्वीकार किया क्योंकि इसमें दुनिया खुद को अधिक सुरक्षित महसूस करती है। इसके साथ इस पर भी गौर करना होगा कि परमाणु प्रसार के बारगेन का असर कम होने के साथ साथ ऐसे देशों की संख्या बढ़ी है जो परमाणु हथियार की क्षमता हासिल करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। शीत युद्ध के दौर में इस मामले में सिर्फ अमेरिका और सोवियत संघ की होड़ को लेकर आशंका थी। लगता था कि इस वजह से वैश्विक परमाणु युद्ध शुरू हो जाएगा। हालांकि आज इस खतरे में वेपन्स ऑफ मास डिस्ट्रक्शन WMD यानी सामूहिक विनाश के हथियार, उनकी डिलीवरी, एक मिनट साहब, मैकेनिज्म यानी उन्हें छोड़ने वाली व्यवस्था, तकनीक और परमाणु आतंकवाद भी शामिल हो गए। इस संदर्भ में चीन और पाकिस्तान के बीच परमाणु और मिसाइल के क्षेत्र में सहयोग और उत्तर कोरिया व ईरान में मिसाइल से जुड़ी गतिविधियों का जिक्र करना भी जरूरी है। इनमें से हरेक का असर एशिया में सैन्य संतुलन पड़ा। सभापति, मैं 1 मिनट में अपनी बात समाप्त करूंगा। ताकत के इस खेल से मौजूदा परमाणु प्रसार व्यवस्था प्रभावित हो रही है। इसमें मुख्य चुनौती यह है कि इस खेल में नए देशों के पावर हासिल करने के साथ परमाणु अस्त्र से जुड़ी बहस कहीं अधिक चुनौतीपूर्ण हो जाती है। नई वैश्विक व्यवस्था में होड़, प्रतिद्वंदता, राज्य तो संघर्ष बढ़ रहे हैं।
Yes.
अभी तक एक मिनट साहब, अभी तक वैश्विक राजनीतिक और सामरिक व्यवस्था को देखता है, उसकी खास बात है कि कई देशों के बीच गठजोड़, नियम आधारित एंगेजमेंट और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कानून का समान रहा है, लेकिन हमें इन पर दबाव बढ़ता रहा। दुनिया समझती थी कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उदार व्यवस्था उसका अधिकार है, जो कि सच नहीं है। जब तक इसे मौजूदा एक मिनट समाप्त करूं मैं, सिद्धांत और व्यवस्था के आधार पर मजबूत नहीं बनाया जाता, बरकरार रखने की कोशिश नहीं होती, तब तक इसके खत्म होने की आशंका से इनकार नहीं किया जाता। सभापति महोदय, 1 मिनट में मेरी लास्ट बात खत्म करूंगा, क्योंकि ये इस बिल का मामला नहीं है, लेकिन आज जो अवैध लाइसेंस ले लेते हैं, अवैध हथियारों के मामले के अंदर जो दिनों दिन बढ़ रहे हैं, मेरे राजस्थान की बात करूं तो राजस्थान इसके अंदर बहुत बदनाम राज्य रहा। यहाँ हथियारों के फर्जी लाइसेंस बनाने जैसे एक मिनट रुको तो सुनो, मुद्दों पर उदाहरण देना चाहूंगा। अभी एमपी साहब बहुत चिंतित हो रहे, चलो इनका छोड़ देता हूं मैं, गंगानगर छोड़ देता हूं मैं, रुको तो एक मिनट। जहां सबसे ज्यादा फर्जी लाइसेंस बने, अलवर के अंदर कलेक्टर की फर्जी मुहर लगाकर जिला मजिस्ट्रेट कार्यालय में डीएम की नाक के नीचे। मैं इसमें एक सुझाव देना चाहूंगा कि सामने एक मैं आपको उदाहरण देना चाहूंगा कि राजस्थान के एटीएस ने 2017 में ऑपरेशन जुबेदा के तहत दलाल गिरोह को गिरफ्तार किया। दलाल गिरोह जम्मू कश्मीर के जिलाधिकारियों और हथियार बेचने वाले लोगों के बीच दलाल का काम करता था। उस समय एटीएस ने सुझाव है साहब, एक मिनट, एटीएस ने उससे 565 लाइसेंस जब्त किए थे, जिनमें से 93 लोग ऐसे थे जिन्होंने कभी जम्मू में नौकरी नहीं की, वहां नौकरी पैसा बता के लाइसेंस दिए। जिला कलेक्टर के अलावा केंद्र को अपना एक प्रतिनिधि, मेरा ये था कि जिला कलेक्टर लाइसेंस बनाता है, हमारा कोई हस्तक्षेप नहीं रहता। मैं चाहता हूं कि केंद्र का जिन लोगों को वास्तव में लाइसेंस की जरूरत है, वो तो चक्कर लगाते रहते कलेक्ट्रेट में, 20-20 साल हो गए, और जिनको आवश्यकता नहीं वो 3-3 लेके बैठे। मेरा निवेदन रहेगा केंद्र सरकार भी हस्तक्षेप करे, केंद्र का प्रतिनिधि भी लाइसेंस बनाने की उस कमेटी के अंदर रहे।
Thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity to speak on the weapon of mass destruction and the delivery system prohibition of unlawful activities amendment bill 2022. The bill is in the line with our international obligation under UN Charter to promote international peace and development. The existing law covers unlawful activities relating to biological, chemical and nuclear weapon and their delivery system, and provides for integrated legal measures to exercise control over the export of material, equipment and technologies in relation to the weapon of the mass destruction and their delivery system, and for prevention of the transfer of non-state actors or terrorists. Sir, India is a responsible nuclear weapon state and is committed as per its nuclear doctrine to maintain credible minimum deterrence with the posture of no first use and non-use against non-nuclear weapon state. The Patent Act provides overarching and integrated legislation providing unlawful activities in relation to the weapon of mass destruction and their delivery system. While India's firm commitment to safeguard its security as nuclear weapon state and its commitment to global nuclear disarmament, the Act seeks to effectively translate at the operational level of India's commitment to prevent the proliferation of the weapon as mass destruction. Sir, the Indian government must view nuclear weapon as a part of comprehensive national security strategy that includes diplomacy, armed control, initiative and conventional force to maximize stability and peace in the region. I would like to bring to the notice, 1 minute, to the Minister. Sir, the cyber warfare technology is another transdomain capability that are spreading rapidly. Indian nuclear weapon related system should be ready to respond to cyber threats. Sir, the biological convention, India remains particularly vulnerable to the biological threat and has history of hostile political conflicts. 1 minute. Sir, 1 minute. India needs to take a lead in ensure of biological weapon convention in effect in the aim of curbing use of biological agent or toxin. The primary focus of India at biological weapon convention should be to insert and participate in the scientific advisory board where there should be scientists representative of various participating countries, industries, socialists and academics. And only the last point, sir, there should be a reform in DRDO, which is our India's defense industry core, whose main laboratory is in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, sir, because of massive failure of the indigenous weapon program do not paint paint a good picture, and I would want the minister to clarify
Honourable
how
Member
the
Shri
government
Madhav.
plans to.
Thank you very much, Speaker, sir. The Weapons of Mass Destruction Bill 2022 seeks to prohibit financing of any activity in relation to weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. The bill also aims to prohibit making available funds, financial assets or economic resources for any prohibited activity in connection with weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. The bill seeks to modify the 2005 Law Weapons of Mass Destruction and their delivery systems Prohibited of Unlawful Activities Act 2005. The 2005 Act prohibits unlawful activities including manufacturing, transport and unlawful activities including manufacturing, transport or transfer and delivery of weapons of mass destruction. The bill bars people from financing any prohibited activity related to weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. To prevent such financing, the bill empowers the Centre to freeze, seize or attach funds, financial assets or economic resources held, owned or controlled delivery on indirectly. Sir, the bill also prohibited people from making finances or related services available for the benefit of other persons connected to any prohibited activity. It is an accordance with the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force that have mandated against financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems, as well as the United Nations Security Council's targeted financial sanctions. The Weapon of Mass Destruction Bill 2022 was felt to fulfill India's international obligations.
Madhavji,
I congratulate the government for this bill and convey our party support for this bill, sir.
Thank you. Honourable Member Shri Danish Shaliji.
Sir, I thank you very much, sir. I rise here to support the Weapons of Mass Destructions and the Delivery System Prohibition of Unlawful Activities Amendment Bill 2020. सर, ये सदन का इतिहास रहा है, जब भी इस तरीके का कोई बिल लाया जाता है तो सर्वसम्मति से हम लोग इस ऐसे किसी भी बिल को पास करते हैं। मुझे फक्र है इस बात का कि मैं गौतम बुद्ध के लैंड से, महात्मा गांधी की धरती से हम पूरी दुनिया को अमन शांति का पैगाम देते हैं। और ये इतिहास रहा है हमारे देश का कि हमने हमेशा ऐसी चीजों के खिलाफ अंतर्राष्ट्रीय प्लेटफॉर्म पे बात रखी है। और क्योंकि मुझे खुशी है इस बात की, हमारे जो आज के विदेश मंत्री हैं वो कैरियर डिप्लोमेट रहे हैं, उन्होंने भी जो है लगातार ये इंटरनेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म पे रखा है, क्योंकि पूरी दुनिया जानती है कि इस तरीके के जो वेपन्स होते हैं, वेपन्स ऑफ मास डिस्ट्रक्शन, देखा है दुनिया ने कि हिरोशिमा नागासाकी में क्या हुआ। वेपन्स ऑफ मास डिस्ट्रक्शन के नाम पे इराक के अंदर इतने दिन क्या हुआ, वहां कुछ नहीं निकला। लेकिन मैं कॉम्प्लीमेंट करना चाहूंगा हमारे देश के पहले प्रधानमंत्री पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू से लेकर के श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी तक जितने भी देश के प्रधानमंत्री रहे हैं, उनका मतलब न्यूक्लियर हमने हासिल किया। श्रीमती इंदिरा गांधी के जमाने में न्यूक्लियर टेस्ट हुआ, वाजपेयी जी के जमाने में न्यूक्लियर टेस्ट हुआ, शायद उससे पहले वो हो सकता था, जो मेरी जानकारी है काफी पहले तैयार था। लेकिन क्योंकि उस वक्त के प्रधानमंत्रियों की प्रायोरिटीज कुछ और थी, आफ्टर लिबरलाइजेशन या हमारे पड़ोसी मुल्क के साथ शांति बहाल करने की, शायद इसलिए उसको डिले किया गया। लेकिन वाजपेयी जी के टाइम पे वो जो है पोखरण टेस्ट हुआ। और जहां तक हमारे यहाँ ऐसे वेपन्स, मतलब सीक्रेसी की बात है। मैं कॉम्प्लीमेंट करना चाहूंगा अपने देश के साइंटिस्ट को कि उनका कंट्रीब्यूशन है असली। ये हम लोग पॉलिटिशियंस लोग अपनी पीठ भले ही थपथपाएं, लेकिन सीक्रेसी भी ऐसी सीक्रेसी कि किसी को पता नहीं था पूरी दुनिया में। देश के अंदर भी सिर्फ 3 लोगों को पहले मालूम था, ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर वाजपेयी जी, ऑनरेबल उस वक्त के डिफेंस मिनिस्टर जॉर्ज फर्नांडिस साहब, और जो साइंटिफिक एडवाइजर थे प्राइम मिनिस्टर के डॉक्टर एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम साहब। सिर्फ 3 लोगों को मालूम था। लेकिन वहीं हम देखते हैं कि किस तरीके से हमारे पड़ोसी मुल्क के जो न्यूक्लियर साइंटिस्ट थे, उन्होंने जो है लीक किया, उन्होंने वहां की टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रांसफर की और ऐसे लोगों के हाथ में लग गई जो दुनिया को खतरा बन सकता है। लेकिन हमारे यहाँ जो है सीक्रेसी रही, और क्योंकि वो पाकिस्तान ने खुद माना कि वो AQ खान ने जो है गलती की है और वहां से इंफॉर्मेशन लीक की है। मैं सभापति महोदय, मैं इतना ही कहना चाहता हूं कि न्यूक्लियर सप्लाई ग्रुप की यहाँ बात आई, जो क्लीन वेवर की बात थी, मैं चाहूंगा मंत्री जी जब अपना जवाब देंगे उस पर क्लैरिटी देंगे, उस पर जो है रोशनी डालेंगे। लेकिन मैंने कहा कि ऐसे हर मामले में हम लोग, मैं खत्म कर रहा हूं, ऐसे हर मामले में हम लोग सर्वसम्मत रहते हैं। लेकिन हाँ, एक बार जरूर 2008 में जब हम न्यूक्लियर वेवर लेने जा रहे थे, उस सरकार के दौरान मनमोहन सिंह जी की सरकार थी, लेकिन उस वक्त न्यूक्लियर वेवर के खिलाफ आज के सत्ता पक्ष जो थे वो विरोध कर रहे थे, और इस सदन के अंदर ऐसी चीज ला करके इस पटल पर रखी गई जो इस सदन के नाम पर काला धब्बा साबित हुई है। मैं एक बार फिर ये कहते हुए कि हम ऐसे किसी भी बिल के समर्थन में हैं, सर्वसम्मति से हम इस बिल को पास करना चाहते हैं। मैं आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूं। सिर्फ एक क्लैरिफिकेशन के साथ कि जब मंत्री जी जवाब देंगे तो न्यूक्लियर प्लांट्स वगैरह में जो लीक होता है, जो सुनामी आई जैसे जापान के अंदर भी उसमें चेरनोबिल में भी हुआ, तो इसका भी ध्यान हमें रखना चाहिए। मैं इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ अपनी बात खत्म करता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
ऑनरेबल मेंबर श्री निशिकांत दुबे जी।
धन्यवाद सभापति महोदय। मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में विदेश मंत्री जी जो द्वारा लाए हुए द वेपन्स ऑफ मास डिस्ट्रक्शन एंड द डिलीवरी सिस्टम प्रोहिबिशन बिल अमेंडमेंट बिल 2022 के समर्थन में बोलने के लिए खड़ा हुआ है। सर, गीता में 18वें अध्याय में कृष्ण ने पूरा सार कहा। सर, सार ये था कि सर्वधर्मानि परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वां सर्व पापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः। आज जो दुनिया है सर, पूरी ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड हो गई है, और इतना खतरा आम जनमानस को, आम लोगों को कभी नहीं था जितना कि आज खतरा है। कोविड के बाद पूरी दुनिया बड़ी परेशान है। क्या हुआ, चाइना में ये बायोलॉजिकल वेपन के तौर पर यूज हुआ या नहीं हुआ, अमेरिका और चाइना एक दूसरे से लड़ रहा है। लेकिन कभी दुनिया में किसी ने यह सोचा नहीं, वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की हम बात करते हैं, बड़ी चर्चा होती है इस पार्लियामेंट में, लेकिन पिछले 2 साल में क्या वसुधैव कुटुंबकम हो पाए? आज लोग अपने लिए परेशान। पूरे कोविड में यदि हमने देखा तो बेटा जो है पिता के लाश को जलाने के लिए तैयार नहीं था, या पिता जो है बेटे के लाश को लेने के लिए तैयार नहीं था। इसीलिए आज जब माननीय विदेश मंत्री जी कह रहे थे, और जिसके ऊपर मैंने देखा कि सभी समर्थन करते हुए बड़ी चर्चा किए, क्या विदेश मंत्री जी ने ठीक नहीं कहा कि कोई भी विदेश नीति है आज की डेट में, तो उस विदेश नीति में भारत कहां खड़ा है, हमको कहां सुविधा है, हमको क्या फायदा है? क्या इस कोरोना के बाद भी हम नहीं समझे? आज भी हम पूरी दुनिया का जो है ठेका लेकर बैठे हुए हैं कि ईरान में क्या हो रहा है, यूके में क्या हो रहा है, यूक्रेन में क्या हो रहा है, रूस में क्या हो रहा है। अरे जहां हो रहा है, यदि हमको कोई बुलाएगा तो हम अपनी व्यवस्था देंगे। मान ना मान मैं तेरा मेहमान, इस तरह से जो है आप टांग अड़ाने की बात करते। आपके साथ कौन है? फारूक साहब, आप जहां से आते हैं, चाइना वहां आ गया, पाक ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर में, वो हमारा हिस्सा था। 1947-48 से वो हमारा हिस्सा पाकिस्तान ने अवैध रूप से कब्जा कर लिया है, हमारे नागरिक हैं। लेकिन क्या 1947-48 से कोई ऐसा कंट्री खड़ा हुआ जो कि आपको पाकिस्तान ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर दे रहा है? आपके साथ अक्साई चीन ले लिया, चीन ने वहां पूरा कारोकरम जो है वो बना लिया, पूरा रास्ता बना लिया। क्या हालत है? और आपके साथ पूरी दुनिया नहीं खड़ी है, आपको जो है उतनी ताकतवर नहीं मान रही है, और आप चाहते हो कि हम पूरी दुनिया को जो है ठीक कर लें। आज भी जो चर्चा चल रही है, और मैं बड़े सभ्य तरीके से सभी का सम्मान करते हुए कहता हूं कि पहले अपने बारे में सोचिए। जो मैं आपको कह रहा था ना कि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जो पंचामृत के सिद्धांत पर चले, केवल हंसने से नहीं होता है, केवल मजाक उड़ाने से नहीं होता है, केवल यह कहने से नहीं होता है कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी अपने आप को पूरा बढ़ा चढ़ाकर पेश करती है। भारतीय जनता पार्टी काम कर रही है। आज आपको अपने प्रधानमंत्री पर इतनी ताकत नजर आ रही है, तब ना आप कर रहे हैं। और आज जो ये बिल है सर, ये बिल क्या है? आज दुनिया में अलग अलग एक्टिविटी में पूरे ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड में किसी के पास बैंक है, किसी के पास पैसा है, किसी के पास कोकीन है, कोई ड्रग्स दे रहा है, और कोई भी कानून ऐसा नहीं है कि दुनिया में आप मान लीजिए कि भारत में जैसे पुरलिया में एक कांड हुआ सर, मेरे बगल में हुआ कांड, और पुरलिया में हथियार गिरा दिए गए। हथियार गिराने के बाद किस कंट्री ने किस इंटेंशन के साथ किया, उसकी जांच जो है हम आधी अधूरी ही कर पाए। आधी अधूरी इसीलिए कर पाए क्योंकि हमारे पास ये दुनिया की कोई ताकत ऐसी नहीं थी, कोई ऐसा कानून नहीं था कि हम किसी का संपत्ति जब्त कर पाए, किसी का बैंक अकाउंट फ्रीज कर पाए, किसी को जो है हम कोई धक्का पहुंचा पाए। जाने दिया। वही मैं आज कह रहा हूं सर कि 93 में बम ब्लास्ट की बात कर रहे थे। 93 में बस 2-4 मिनट में खत्म करूंगा सभापति महोदय। मैं केवल सदन का ध्यान आकृष्ट करना चाहता हूं कि आप ये समझिए कि 93 में दाऊद इब्राहिम चले गए। आज हम उनकी संपत्ति कितना जब्त कर पा रहे हैं? दुनिया में उनकी जो संपत्ति है तो गलत तरीके से अर्जित की हुई है ना, हमारे देश को तोड़ने के लिए वो संपत्ति है ना। आपके सलाउद्दीन साहब हैं वहां मफ के, 87-88 के बाद यहां से चले गए। हम उसका क्या कर पा रहे हैं? तो आज आपको इस दुनिया में सभी की आवश्यकता है। और ये जो यूएन का रिजोल्यूशन था, FATF का जो रिजोल्यूशन आया, जिसका कि सिग्नेटरी होना है और जिसमें कि हम दुनिया के साथ मिलकर चाहे वो केमिकल वेपन है, चाहे वो बायोलॉजिकल वेपन है, चाहे वो एटॉमिक वेपन है, चाहे वो साइबर सिक्योरिटी का मामला है, चाहे क्रिप्टो का मामला है, इस तरह के चीजों को रोकने के लिए आपको FATF के रिजोल्यूशन को मदद करने की आवश्यकता थी, यूएन को साथ देने की आवश्यकता थी। और इस कारण से माननीय विदेश मंत्री जो इस तरह का बिल लेकर आए हैं, हम उनके समर्थन में खड़े हैं। और मुझे यह लगता है कि विश्व गुरु बनना और भारत को ताकतवर बनाने में माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का योगदान जो है वो पूरे सदन को उसके लिए धन्यवाद देना चाहिए। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ जय हिंद, जय भारत।
थैंक यू। ऑनरेबल मेंबर श्री अधीर रंजन चौधरी जी।
Sir, I rise to support the bill under the nomenclature the weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems, prohibition of unlawful activities amendment bill 2022, as it is intending to amend the weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems, prohibition of unlawful activities act 2005. So without any reservation or without having any qualm, all of us are extending our support to this bill. Since last day, the House has been reverberating and ruminating with the mission, visions, and the thought and the philosophy of our predecessors such as Jawaharlal Nehru ji, Indira ji, Rajiv ji, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. Yes, we have inherited a great country, so it is bound in duty entrusted upon us to defend and protect the country. In the year 1988, 9 June, at the special session on nuclear disarmament at United Nations, Rajiv Gandhi presented a time-bound action plan for nuclear weapon-free world. So it was enunciated by our country long back. What should be done, what needs to be done for the people across the world to stem the rot arising out of the nuclear proliferation. Here we are all talking about Hiroshima, Nagasaki, catastrophic destruction. But it is alarming to note that still the world possesses more than 13,400 nuclear weapons. There have been over 2,000 nuclear tests conducted to date. So disarmament is the best protection against such dangers. It has first conceived and enunciated by our country. Jawaharlal Nehru conceived Atomic Commission, 1974 Project Buddha, 1998 Project Shanti. We have at least made ourselves as a force to be reckoned with. So now the question is that we are trying to resist the threat of weapons of mass destruction by adopting some measures that has been depicted here in this bill. मैं एक बात पूछना चाहते हैं जयशंकर जी से कि जब हिंदुस्तान से एक नहीं एक के बाद एक भारी तादाद के सारे लोग हिंदुस्तान की सारे बैंकों को लूटकर देश से भाग रहे हैं, हम कुछ नहीं कर पाते। कैरिबियन सी के बगल में, कैरिबियन सी के किनारे में बैठते हुए वो लोग मस्ती मार रहे हैं और हम यहाँ फेसबुक में, व्हाट्सएप में उनको देख रहे हैं। तो जरा हिंदुस्तान को लूटते हुए, हमारे देश को सारे धन को लूटते हुए, हमारे देश छोड़ के जो आराम से बाहर घूमते हैं, उन लोगों को खिलाफ हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते। और यहाँ बिल में आप बोलते हैं कि किसी व्यक्ति के पास, किसी व्यक्ति अगर इसमें शामिल होगा तो उसका संपत्ति जब्त करने की आपको एक कानून चाहिए। कानून लीजिए ना, कानून तो हम देना चाहते हैं। अगर मैं लार्जर पर्सपेक्टिव में दो चार बात जरूर कहना चाहते हैं। जयशंकर जी, what is the unequivocal definition of weapons of mass destruction?
Please, let him complete.
I do not have any idea. Unequivocal definition of weapons of mass destruction. I think it depends upon the creativity of the enemy. Before 9/11 in America, when Twin Tower was demolished, have we at that time imagined that a aircraft could be turned into a flying missile? So it depends upon the creativity of the enemy. So we have to prepare ourselves for any eventuality that should be done right at this situation. Because rogue states are there. AK Khan laboratories, I think, still existed somewhere in the world. So how India will be dealing with this kind of unforeseen situation? Here you are talking about person. A person cannot do anything on its own capacity. On the one hand, we are talking about state-sponsored terrorism, that by implication indicates that some states must be behind the terrorist activity. So we know, even knowing everything, our hands are tied. We ought to plead in the international fora. Besides that, we can do nothing more. Even I would suggest the Honorable Minister and the Government of India that till date, from 1925 to 2017, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 international treaties on weapons of mass destruction have been signed. Geneva Protocol, Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, Outer Space Treaty, Non-Proliferation Treaty, Seabed Arms Control Treaty, Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, Biological Toxin Weapons Convention, Chemical Weapons Convention, Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. सबसे ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण जो है न्यूक्लियर कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव न्यूक्लियर टेस्ट बैन ट्रीटी अब तक ये नॉट इन फोर्स में है 2021 साल हो गया अब तक एंट्री इनटू फोर्स का जो डेट वो डेट अभी तक नहीं पहुंचाया मतलब ये जो सबसे बड़ा कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्टेट बैन ट्रीटी ये होना चाहिए वो अभी तक नहीं हुआ ये केमिकल और बायोलॉजिकल वेपन क्या होता है ये पुअर मैन्स एटम बॉम्ब जो कन्वेंशनल एसिमेट्री को ऑफसेट करने के लिए स्मॉलर कंट्रीज को इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं ये वेपन्स ऑफ मास डिस्ट्रक्शन के नाम पे हम देखा कि इराक को डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिया गया वेपन्स ऑफ मास डिस्ट्रक्शन ये आज के नहीं बहुत पुराने जमाने से ये बात आ रहे हैं ये केमिकल वेपन ये बायोलॉजिकल वेपन ये आज की तारीख के नहीं लेकिन हमारे पास ये सबसे जूझने के लिए फायरवॉल क्या है कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इमरजेंसी मैकेनिज्म क्या है हमारे पास उतना इंटेलिजेंस है या नहीं क्योंकि सबसे ज्यादा इंटेलिजेंस की जरूरत होते हैं वेपन्स ऑफ मास डिस्ट्रक्शन अमेरिका पे हमला होने के बाद सारे दुनिया सचेत हुए थे उसके बाद हम भी सचेत होने लगे लेकिन हमारे साधन है क्या सिर्फ कानून पारित करने से इससे हम मुकाबला नहीं कर सकते और सारा आप मेजरमेंट लीजिए इसमें हमें कोई आपत्ति नहीं है लेकिन कम से कम हमारे देश को सुरक्षित रखने के लिए जो कदम उठाओगे बिना हिचकिचाहट हम उनको समर्थन देते रहेंगे चाहे आपको नेहरू जी को अच्छा लगे या बुरा लगे इंदिरा जी को अच्छा लगे या बुरा लगे राजीव गांधी को अच्छा लगे या बुरा लगे लेकिन देश हम सबका है हम देश की निर्माता में सबसे आगे रहे थे आगे है आगे रहूंगा नमस्कार
Thank you. Honorable Minister Jaishankar.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I have the privilege of speaking to this august house for a second time today. And yes. I would say it is a particularly satisfying day in Parliament because twice I have seen that there is unanimity in the House on a foreign policy matter.
Very good.
Earlier in the day, I said foreign policy should be a subject for maximum consensus. I'm so glad that people are moving in that direction, and the support that I have heard from every speaker, there were totally 21 speakers, that is indeed something which is very heartening. It is also natural that there will be questions, there will be concerns, clarifications sought, and naturally when any bill is tabled, it is the obligation of the minister moving it to provide it. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, what is it today we are trying to do through this bill? We are upgrading a law which is 17 years old, which, like many other legislations, clearly needs updating. And updating laws and terminating antiquated rules are both part of good governance. So today is an exercise in one way of good governance. Now, to understand this particular bill, I would take you back to a legislation which was passed by this House in 1947. It's called the United Nations Security Council Act. And the Act essentially obligates us that central government will apply any measures not involving the use of armed force which will give effect to any decision of the Security Council. So we had made a commitment as part of our foreign policy at the very start of our independence. We are good members of the UN, and therefore if there is a UN Security Council resolution which requires action, we will implement it. Now, after 9/11 events happened, there was great concern about terrorists and unauthorized parties getting hold of weapons of mass destruction, their ingredients, their technologies. It was not something which was completely new. From 1970s, there were actually warnings and writings on this subject. But because of what happened at 9/11, this became a very major international concern. So the Security Council at that point of time passed a resolution, 1540, which dealt with this particular issue. And the two key provisions of this, which is relevant for this august House to look at. One, that it decides that all states shall take and enforce effective measures to establish domestic controls to prevent proliferation of nuclear, chemical and biological weapons, the means of delivery, and appropriate controls will include, they said, production, use, storage, transfer, trade, etc. What they did not do at that time in 1540 was to specifically refer to finance. And so when we moved this legislation in 2005, we took our provisions from the Security Council resolution. Now, since then, the importance of finance, and some members have raised this issue, was finance implicit in it? I will address that particular issue. This has been the subject of comment of the FATF. Now, all honourable members will understand the importance of FATF. FATF today evaluates whether countries are responsible in terms of their financial policy. We have seen countries who have done things, who have followed policies and actions which are not right, brought to account. And there are very significant consequences of that. I think most members are familiar with the countries involved. Some of them are very close to us. And the FATF has a recommendation number 7, which says countries should implement targeted financial actions to comply with Security Council resolution, and that they should freeze without delay funds and assets and ensure no funds and assets are made available directly or indirectly to any person or entity dealing with WMD. So it is this process, our initial obligation, the 1540 resolution, the 2005 legislation we passed, which today in the light of FATF deliberations and our own security and our international obligation and the importance of finance to this, which is causing us to come to you with this amendment. Now, some issues specific issues were raised. I will deal with them very quickly. I think Uttam Reddy ji, who was the first speaker, brought up this issue. You are referring to persons. You are not referring to entity. Now, I would like to inform him, sir, through you, that under the General Clauses Act 1897, persons is defined to include any company or association or body of individuals, whether incorporated or not, and it covers entities, companies and organizations, and that the original act which we are amending today also uses persons in view of this, and I think Premchandranji later on in his remarks recognized that. The second issue which came up was, what is the necessity for this? Can it not be done under current legislation? Why do we have to take the trouble of amending it? Now, many other countries have specific legislation. Germany has, Switzerland has Switzerland War Material Act. Germany has Germany's Foreign Trade and Payments Act. So there are many examples because FATF and the current requirements need a very specific reference to financing. What were we doing till now? Till now, we were issuing notifications under the UN Security Council Act of 1947. And what we would do, and this would relate to financial measures, and our notifications are implemented by the Reserve Bank of India and other involved government bodies. They would advise banks, they would do the monitoring following order which MEA would regularly bring out. Our effort, Honorable Speaker, sir, today is to give legislative backing so that this is not a one-by-one ad hoc measure, but there is a legal statutory way of dealing with what is a continuous problem. There was an issue which was raised whether this is, why is this so limited? It is limited, and many honorable members have raised many other concerns. People have debated disarmament, they have debated world order, they have referred to
माननीय सदस्यगणों, अगर यदि सभा सहमति हो तो सभा की कार्रवाई बिल पारित होने तक बढ़ाई जाए।
So the issue is whether the proposal, is it very narrow? Speaker, sir, it is meant to be an amendment for a shortcoming or something which is missing in the current law. It is not meant to be a new law. It is not meant to be a broad policy directive. So I would like honorable members to appreciate it. I appreciate and understand a lot of what they have said on different issues. Many of them are not directly relevant to what we are discussing. In some cases, these are issues which, for example, there was a reference to BrahMos missile. I think Raksha Mantri ji has made a statement already on this issue. There were some other issues which came. I don't want to take all the issues. We are already at 6 o'clock. But I want to emphasize that the whole purpose of this exercise is to make a very specific change in law, additionality in law, so that this country's record, this country's reputation, this country's security is ensured by financial measures which the government is in a position to take. There was also concern expressed by Ritesh Pandey about whether, in a sense, businesses by mistake, whether they will get caught in this situation. Ko pata nahi tha, kuch galat kar diya, kisi ne bataya nahi. Again, in the past, we have an experience of this. We have outreach with industry. There is a way of communicating this. There is a list, a long list of individuals and entities who are already sanctioned. So I think anybody who's dealing with this business, who is looking at anything which involves weapons of mass destruction, their technology, their equipment, I think our reach out and the nature of the business would alert them to it. So I think the possibility that somebody would by mistake get caught in a financial law, that is something which is not realistic. He was also concerned that he said sometimes you get mistaken positives. You put one name, somebody else's name comes. A sanctions list is not a name. It is not just a name. A sanctions list, I have one in front of me. It has a lot of particulars. It has a person's name, it has aliases, it has date of birth, it has place of birth, it has nationality, it has passport number, identification number, address. So the possibility that that somebody would get mistakenly caught in a financial situation and therefore will be wrongly harmed, that is something which is, I would say, the experience since 2005 has not borne it out. If it has not happened in the last 17 years, I think members should be confident that that is something which would not take place. There was also an issue whether this would affect whether this would affect legitimate research and development. I think Jadev Gallaji raised that. I think that is again not the case. This is a very specialized. This is a very specialized area. I think most countries, most scientists, most governments are very aware of what they were doing. Manish Tiwari ji raised one particular case. This was relating to Bodh Gaya. He wanted to know whether NIA had made a charge sheet referring to WMD Act in the case of a Bodh Gaya incident in 2018. I would like to confirm to him, he is not in the House, that this was not the case. The FIR had mentioned it, but this was not a decision of the NIA, and when NIA took charge of the case, there was no reference to the WMD Act. A few broader, yes, Premchandran ji asked one very specific issue, saying that there was a reference to aid and to abet. And if there is aid and abet in the existing law, finance, why should you have a specific reference to finance? The judgment of our ministry, our finance ministry, our law ministry, and even our foreign ministry is that aid and abet were not sufficient, that it required something very specific on finance. FATF required it, and that Section 15 only refers to punishment for contravening Section 9. So he wanted this clarification, and he said if I give that clarification, he would be prepared to support the bill. So I hope he will support the bill. Now, over and above this, Speaker, sir, I will very quickly run through some notable points which people raised. There were references to extradition agreement. It's a very different matter. You know, what extradition agreements we have, what is our success, who we have been able to bring, who did what crime under which regime. It's a different subject. We will have, I suspect, differing opinions. We will not have the consensus that we have on foreign policy. The second issue, I think, is the relevance of this. I think Rathore ji, Rajavardhan ji, made a very good point. We think of this like something in a movie, that, you know, maybe science fiction mein ho sakta hai, koi attack ho sakta hai, nuclear. These things have happened in real life. Japan mein you had a sarin attack. You had these anthrax letters that he referred to. So they are not far-fetched scenarios. So we are dealing with the security of the nation. I referred to the broad purposes. Saugata Roy ji today and yesterday made a set of observations, not again specific to the issue. He felt I was very taciturn, I spoke very little. I think perhaps I'm reflecting of a government which does more and speaks less. Maybe he is comfortable with a period, and I end with, you know, I noted the remarks of Nishikant ji, that is it necessary for us, in fact he referred yesterday to Krishna Menon. Krishna Menon is known for the record of giving the world's longest speech in the United Nations. I think, yes, I assure you I can say the same in 6 minutes. So my point is, today we should be less concerned in foreign policy about giving gyan to the world. We should play our role, we should make our contribution, we should look at our national interest, we should do this effectively. And I am, Speaker sir, with your permission, referring to this because he made a very specific observation, saying our diplomacy is passive. At the same time, he said, but Prime Minister has spoken to Russia and Ukraine only. अब झगड़ा रशिया यूक्रेन के बीच में, who else will he speak to? So he's speaking to the relevant party. Maybe doing the relevant thing may look irrelevant to other people, I don't know. But the point I want to make is, we are today in diplomacy very, very focused. In the morning we had discussed one aspect of our diplomacy. Today we are looking at a policy and legal issue which is very pointedly aimed at something else. Beyond this, I would make the point that today there are big challenges. A lot of the challenges are in the disarmament, in the arms control, in the proliferation domains. There are regimes and laws in which we are part. One which many members expressed interest in is, where are we on the nuclear suppliers group? The nuclear suppliers group requires a consensus. There is a reason, and many of you are aware of why that consensus is not there. There are countries who genuinely have concerns which they are willing to debate. There are countries who seem to have another agenda, but are creating blocks to the consensus. So it is something that we are working on. But again, the House will appreciate that since 2014, we have become a member of the MTCR, we have become a member of the Wassenaar arrangement, we have become a member of the Australia group. So our role in global arms control, disarmament, proliferation regimes and initiatives is today very strong. Our reputation is very good, and I believe that the passage of this bill will strengthen both our national security and our global reputation. So, with your permission, sir, this was my response to the honorable member.
प्रश्न ये कि विधेयक पर विचार किया जाए, जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें। मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में विधेयक पर विचार करने हेतु प्रस्ताव स्वीकृत हुआ। अब सभा विधेयक पर खंडवार विचार करेगी। प्रश्न 1 की खंड 2 विधेयक का अंग बने, जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें। मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में खंड 2 विधेयक का अंग बना। श्री विनायक राव जी, संशोधन संख्या 1।
ये विधेयक के समर्थन में ये अमेंडमेंट दिया है कि इतने हिस्टोरिकल विधेयक इस संसद में आज मंत्री महोदय जी ने पेश किया है। तो मेरी विनंती है कि इस विधेयक आज लोकसभा में, कल राज्यसभा में पास होने के बाद, राष्ट्रपति जी की सिग्नेचर होने के बाद तुरंत इसका अमल होना चाहिए, जो कि एक आदर्श परंपरा इस संसद में निर्माण हो जाएगी। ऐसे मेरी विनंती।
विड्रॉ ना, विड्रॉ करो ना। प्रश्न है कि खंड 1 अधिनियम सूत्र विधेयक का पूरा नाम विधेयक का अंग बने, जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें। मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में खंड 1 अधिनियम सूत्र विधेयक का पूरा नाम विधेयक का अंग बने। मंत्री जी प्रस्ताव करें कि विधेयक पारित किया जाए।
Sir, I rise to move that the weapons of mass destruction and the delivery systems, prohibition of unlawful activities, Amendment Bill 2022 be passed.
प्रश्न ये कि विधेयक को पारित किया जाए, जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें। मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में हुआ। प्रस्ताव स्वीकृत हुआ, विधेयक पारित हुआ। प्रश्न ये कि सभा 6 अप्रैल 2022 को सभा में प्रस्तुत कार्य मंत्रणा समिति के 33वें प्रतिवेदन से सहमत है। जो सदस्य प्रस्ताव के पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य प्रस्ताव के पक्ष में ना कहें। मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में हुआ। प्रस्ताव अनुमोदित किया गया। सभा की कार्रवाई गुरुवार 7 अप्रैल 2022 को प्राप्त 11 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।